Did you ever wonder how a medicine is made? Who are the people who actually figure out if it's going to be a pill or a liquid? And why the heck can't all medicines come in gummy form? Find out today on Things That Make You Go, huh?
Things that make you go, huh?
My name is Brett Hellman, and I work at a biopharmaceutical company called AbbVie, which means that I'm surrounded by a bunch of scientists saying very sciencey things all day long. And the funny thing is, I actually have no background in science. So if I was in high school and I was taking a science class, I would probably be getting an F right about now because it was a very hard topic for me to understand. And my previous career, believe it or not, was in what I like to call fake science or fake medicine.
No, it can't be. My mind's just playing tricks on me. James is dead.
No, Barbara. I'm very much alive.
So that's right. I worked for 15 crazy years on the soap opera As the World Turns. Some of you may or may not know what that is. But I was living in a fictionalized town, basically, that had people coming down with serious illnesses 1 week and then miraculously recovering the next week. And oftentimes a villain would fall off a cliff, plummet to his death, and then he would resurface 2 years later with minor bumps and bruises. It was that kind of goings on. So this may have you wondering how on earth I found myself working for a biopharmaceutical company, but that's actually a story for an entirely different podcast. So just getting into working here at AbbVie, now I'm continually faced with really just complicated concepts and words that literally sound Greek to me, like a foreign language, right? Basically things that make me go, huh? I often say that to myself, like, what is going on here? So I took it upon myself to say, you know what? I work at a biopharmaceutical company. The world is my oyster here. Why not approach some of my colleagues, right, and find out what they're talking about and try to have them simplify some of the most complicated topics that I have to deal with on a daily basis. So I've roped in a couple of guests today that are going to help me try to understand how a medicine actually gets made. And by that, I mean, what is the actual process, right, that results in a capsule I take? I buy a capsule over the counter at a drugstore, and what goes into that process of making that? Or if I have a cold and I take a liquid medicine. And we're about to find out how this all unfolds. So with me, I have two people today who are going to help here. One is by the name of Brian Anderson. Brian's sitting right here in front of me. Brian, can you tell me who you are and what you do?
Well, so I'm Brian Anderson. I'm the Director of Drug Products for AbbVie's operations group. So my group handles all of our drug products as they go from R&D into commercialization. And then we support products for the life of the product as we manufacture and distribute.
That sounds pretty serious business there. Nancy Seaver, we have here with us as well. Nancy, can you tell us who you are and what you do?
My name is Nancy Seaver. I work in the R&D organization at AbbVie. My group is called the CMC, Product Development Director Group. Our group is responsible for managing programs as they go from early development, just about discovery, through commercialization.
Thank you, Nancy. That sounds very interesting. Could you expand on that a little bit more for us?
If you look at the beginning of how a drug or a medicine is developed, it starts in a discovery group, and that group is charged with identifying molecules that can address certain targets, certain disease areas. And so once that molecule is identified, then it enters into development. And that's where our group comes in. And we are charged with taking that molecule and figuring out how to give it to patients. So how do you make that molecule into medicine that people can buy at home? And so to make that happen, we do a lot of work, a lot of research, a lot of data analysis, a lot of clinical studies where we actually test the medicine in people to make sure it actually works. And once we find that it works and it does what we need it to do, we could file a regulatory submission. So the government has to agree that we can sell this medicine to people. And at that point, we transition it to Brian's group.
And so my group takes over and converts that from a small-scale process that they've used in development to a full-scale commercial process to make the amount of material that we need for the number of patients that we hope to serve. And then we support the product as we continuously improve it throughout the life of the product. And as challenges come up, there's always problems as you're manufacturing. So our group supports all of the technical aspects of that.
That was actually really helpful. Thank you very much. Is this what you guys wanted to be when you grew up?
I always really liked chemistry, and I liked the idea of helping people, and I think that's what brought me to a pharmaceutical company. It kind of combines those two things together.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and my background's in chemical engineering, and so I've always enjoyed both the more mathematical aspects of problem solving as well as some of the hands-on, real tactile things, taking radios apart as a kid and things. And so this kind of a job anyway allows you to do both of those things of, really support something that has a tangible benefit to people as well as exercising your mental skills.
Okay, so we're going to get started with some complicated questions here that I'm hoping you can help me understand. The first question I had is, let's say a company has just discovered a medicine, right? So at what point in the process, I guess my question is, at what point in the process does the discussion turn to how is this medication going to be delivered or administered to patients?
Sometimes that discussion happens before the medicine's even found. A lot of times for AbbVie, we have certain therapeutic areas that we're focused on, right? I mentioned this discovery group that's trying to identify a molecule. Really, before they even start looking, there's kind of a product profile that they're trying to achieve. So there is a sense of there's a medical need, right? There's a sickness, a disease that's out in the population that doesn't have a cure right now. And so we're trying to address that medical need. And a lot of times the dosage form of how that is going to be addressed is kind of already predetermined. And it actually goes into how we identify that molecule. So if I know it's going to be an oral product, so it's going to be a pill that somebody takes, I'm going to target certain kinds of molecules that will make that possible.
Do certain molecules work better with a pill as opposed to a liquid or a biologic or something?
Exactly. So some molecules don't work as a tablet. They have to be an injectable, right? And so certain molecules the other way would not work as an injectable.
There certainly are products that are coming to market on a yearly basis that are so life-saving and so impactful to the patient where the dosage form may be less critical. And then there's other cases where you really need a dosage form that is easy to take and has a much better profile for the patient. So it's definitely a case by case.
Yeah, and there's definitely a hierarchy in terms of what is a preferred dosage form versus another. So generally, it's perceived that a tablet or a pill is the easiest form, most amenable to most people. Maybe you can even argue liquid or tablet, depending, okay? And then anything that's an injectable would be kind of a little bit less comfortable, right? Requires a little bit more for the patient. Something that is injectable every 2 weeks would be less burdensome than something that's injectable every day. And then, there's kind of an extrapolation to something that is continuously infused, right? So there's kind of a hierarchy, and from a patient-centric perspective, we strive to make it as easy as possible for the patient, but sometimes it's dictated by the indication and the molecule and the therapy that you're trying to achieve.
If you had your druthers, would it just be a pill one time a day kind of thing?
Yes.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it doesn't always kind of work out
Yeah.
that way. Or maybe it's one pill once a month. I mean, maybe that's even easier, right? And so
Yeah.
And
you have to
sometimes
kind of
even
think
with
about
those,
that.
there's a balance because what we're really trying to achieve with a lot of that is around compliance, right? So
Right.
if you have a medication that has a particular dosing regimen, it is most effective if you follow that dosing regimen. And so if you end up with a dose that was once every 6.5 days, then
Yeah.
you're much less likely than
Yeah.
every day actually has some benefits over
That's interesting.
some
Yeah.
others.
I didn't think about that. My next question would be how how is a medication made? So in layman's terms, how do you actually get the medication into a pill or liquid form or whatever form it's going to be in?
Yeah, so there's a lot of steps that go into that, and I'll talk about a couple of them real briefly here. But really, the first step of that is to come up with the molecule itself, and that molecule can either be a small chemical molecule like you'd find in Tylenol, or it can be a very complex molecule like a protein that's found in insulin. And so, depending on how the molecule is shaped, I think Nancy had talked about the discovery that goes on and how we try to identify those molecules. But depending on what the synthesis route is, whether it's a fermentation or a biologic or a small molecule synthesis, there's a series of steps that take place to develop that process, purify the chemical moiety, and get that into a form that can be turned into a final dosage form. That's usually on a small scale. That happens very early on, and then that's about the time that it starts to enter Nancy's shop of how the formulation is developed and how that goes. Do you want to discuss that a little bit?
Yeah, so there's actually different aspects from a manufacturing perspective to also keep in mind that are related to the dosage form. So if it's an oral, like a tablet or a liquid oral solution, it's manufactured under certain guidances. We call them GMP. If you are now making something that is an injectable or infused or anything like that, it's manufactured under aseptic conditions. So that's actually really important in how we make the drug. If it's something that is taken in under the skin or as an IV or anything like that, then it has to be sterile. So we have to make sure it's microbe-free, right? No microbial contamination or anything like that. So it's very sophisticated manufacturing.
I guess that spawns two other questions for me, which is how long does it take when you decide that you're going to move forward with it, and then to it actually hitting the market? It must.
It varies widely. I think anywhere from 4 years, maybe
Yeah,
on the
4 would
short
be
end.
Absolutely the fastest.
Like the fastest possible, and then it could be up to 8, 9 years on the long end.
Wow, that's interesting. Wait, how many hands not physically touch it, but touch that, say, product from inception to market as well? Is it hundreds of? Is it going through different
thousands of
departments?
people.
You're talking to the two, so
Right.
that's it.
Oh, it's just those two, right?
No, it's thousands.
Thousands.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's crazy.
Because there is the technical development, but there's also everything that goes around it, right?
Yeah.
So we mentioned regulatory. So there's a huge aspect of drug development that is making sure that you assemble the right data package such that a regulatory agency like FDA would say, yes, we agree that the drug that you have developed is safe and it does actually address this medical need that we have, and it will treat patients as you have indicated, and yes, you can sell it in the United States, right? So there's a huge kind of, in addition to the actually making the product, there is the documentation that goes with it. And there's the consistent manufacturing, the quality controls that we have in place. There's a whole commercial organization that is definitely part of the story that we tell.
And we have an entire supply chain, and
Yeah.
there's a large number of people that just going into manufacturing and distributing the product, and then upstream where Nancy's group sits, even before it has even made it to market, several hundred people have worked on it for sure.
And so what are the different forms it can be in? You mentioned some before, so a pill, right?
Yeah, tablets, oral solution, capsule.
Those
are all orals.
Injection.
And then you can
And
have an
infusion
injectable.
is like an IV, is that?
An infusion could be an IV, or it could be a subcutaneous infusion. So something like an insulin pump.
Okay.
There's topicals, the topical
Yeah.
creams, and there's
Transdermal
Hmm.
is another.
ocular
What's
drops.
transdermal?
So that's where you have a patch.
Oh, like a nicotine
Like a
patch or
like a
something?
nicotine patch.
Oh,
yeah.
okay. So you have all of these different forms of medication, capsules, injections, infusions, but what informs the decision to place it in a specific dosage form? I guess, does that make sense?
Yeah, so there's multiple things. I'll list a couple, and I'm sure Brian will come up with a few more. So first, it's about that molecule and how stable it is. So ideally, if I develop a molecule that is targeting a certain disease state, I want to make sure that when the patient actually gets it into their system, it's still in that same form I originally made it. So that's what we mean by it's stable, okay? So the molecule hasn't changed as I've manufactured it and stored it and distributed it and then gave it to the patient and they ingested it.
And that's crucial, right?
Yes,
The
it's really
molecule
important
always has
for-
to stay in
yes,
the state.
exactly.
Okay.
And so multiple parts of those steps can contribute to it changing. So for example, let's say that molecule is heat sensitive, or it's temperature, same thing. It is sensitive to the environment that it's in, or it is sensitive to compression. So if I take that molecule and I try to make a pill out of it, and I have to apply a lot of force, right, compress. So it may not allow you to do that. That same molecule may not be soluble, so it doesn't dissolve. And so if it doesn't dissolve, then I have to, on its own, I have to provide it already as a solution. So I couldn't put it into a tablet because it won't dissolve on its own later on. So I provide it to you as a solution. Okay, so then let's say I'm in that category where I have to provide it to you as a solution. It's possible that I'd provide it to you as a solution, you swallow it, it gets into your stomach, it's a very low pH environment, it destroys the molecule. Well, that didn't accomplish the task. So now I have to provide it to you as a solution, but I'm going to say you have to inject it. Because that's the only way that molecule stays intact so that it can do the job that it's supposed to do.
That's interesting.
So it has a lot to do with the physical chemical properties of that molecule, what it can and can't do, but the ultimate goal is to get it into the systemic circulation or to the targeted delivery area in a state that I first made it at. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I can see why I failed in science in high school, but that's very interesting. And actually, I can understand it the way you're saying it. But wow, that's pretty
Is
cool.
there others?
Well, I think how available the molecule is and where you want the absorption to occur. So, the other thing is different drugs have different absorption windows within the gastrointestinal tract. And so depending on what formulation you use and what form the product takes, there's different delivery mechanisms that can be used. So, some of the things like Nancy had said, liquids. So liquids are fairly hard to have controlled release, to have a delayed response. But tablets and capsules, there's the ability to do that.
Yeah, and then maybe one other aspect to just think about, and people I think are familiar with this. Some medication is taken once a day, some might be twice a day, 3 times a day. Well, that's very much dictated on how your body processes that molecule. And so if the body processes it quickly, then I need to provide it more often. If I processes it slower, then I provide it less often. And so that could also drive the difference between a once-a-week injection or a continuous infusion, right? So that could kind of dictate how I have to deliver it so that it maintains whatever the state is that I'm looking to do.
I just thought of something, which is when you were talking about the capsule. So I'm just curious, they sell like on the, when you go to a drugstore, they'll sell a liquid capsule
yeah.
or a hard capsule. Is one get into your system faster than the other? Because I always feel like the liquid one gets into my system faster, but I don't know if it's
It
a
is.
psychological thing.
It is, but it's not that much faster.
So
It's
why do they
largely
have
psychological.
Yes.
why do they have both options?
Because
Well,
some
so
people
for-
prefer it, yeah.
Yeah, and so we're
Some
in
people-
a biopharmaceutical company that addresses very challenging unmet medical needs, and so we're not really in the consumer pharmaceuticals. What you're talking about are more of the over-the-counter consumer pharmaceuticals where patient preference and I'll admit I like the liquid caps instead of the
Yeah, I do
solid
too.
tablets, but that's just my thing, right? That's not.
Yeah.
It doesn't actually make much of a difference.
The difference will be like 10 minutes.
Oh,
And it'll
really?
be like
Oh.
variable
Yeah.
depending on people. But the other piece is swallowability, I think is
Okay.
different if you go with a standard tablet versus a soft gel.
Yeah.
I think some people find those swallow easier.
Okay.
So that could be another reason to have the options.
Okay, cool. Why has no one made a children's cold medicine in a chewable or better yet, a gummy form for kids to take? Any thoughts on that?
One thing that really is critical is patient safety. And a lot of times there's a fine balance between making something aesthetically pleasing and tasting good versus safety risks that go along with that. I know, and I'll just speak as a parent instead of as a pharmaceutical employee, but if there was a gummy candy that had acetaminophen or something like that in it that also tasted really good, I wouldn't want that around my house, because that just is asking for some kind of an issue.
Yeah,
What about
no,
you?
that's, I was going to say abuse is something that we're very conscientious about. And that's why a lot of times medicine in general, kids or adult, doesn't taste good. You take it because you need the medicine,
Right,
but you don't want to
that's-
be abusing it and taking too much of it or sharing it. Hey, this really good, buddy. You have
Yeah.
some. I mean, that's not what it's designed for.
I've taken my kids gummy
gummy vitamins? I
vitamins
do
every
too.
now and then because they do taste good.
And I'll add one more reason for why not use a gummy bear. A lot of times medicines don't taste particularly good. And so if you provide it in a gummy form and somebody chews it in their mouth and it sticks in their teeth, it's probably not going to taste very good.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So making sure it's in a capsule or a tablet that's often film coated prevents the taste in the mouth.
Oh,
And
wow.
so
That's interesting. Okay, Brian, so I got a question for you now.
Yes, sir.
Which is, we're talking about this capsules or infusions. So how do you make it on such a large scale, right? Because you're delivering it to a large group of people, so.
Yeah, and with different therapies certainly have different market sizes, and fortunately some of the oncology products that we have are a little bit smaller for the betterment of the community. It's good that's a smaller number, but then there's a lot of things that impact a large number of people. Some of the kidney diseases or thyroid problems that actually impact a large number, and the amount of tablets or capsules that we have to make is fairly substantial. There's a whole infrastructure of manufacturing around that. It's a very specialty manufacturing. I think Nancy had highlighted a little bit before the sterility that goes into some of the injectables and infusions, and that's a very specialty manufacturing process. Even on the small molecule and fermentation side, where we're making molecules that are not all that dissimilar from other chemical moieties that have been made for other applications, but we make them under very tight manufacturing controls and to ensure a very high level of quality. So the manufacturing itself occurs in large stainless steel containers and large stainless steel manufacturing equipment. It's quite impressive to see. I still enjoy seeing the end product come out, but usually the chemical itself comes out as a powder, or in some cases as a frozen liquid, and then formulated into tablets, capsules, what have you. And those are compressed or filled into capsules, again, using very specialized manufacturing equipment and very tightly controlled processes. I'd encourage people to look and see how these are manufactured. There's some nice videos online of pharmaceutical manufacturing. It's a pretty impressive setup and really takes a lot of specialization and skill.
And it's tested kind of throughout the manufacturing process. So, Brian mentions controls, but we do evaluate at various intermediate steps, as well as the very end. We test the final product and make sure it's meeting all the specifications that it's got to meet. So it's a very tightly controlled process.
Okay, guys, it looks like we're close to being out of time here. So this means that I have to put my money where my mouth is and see if I really learned something from you guys today. I hope I did, so I hope I don't disappoint, right? I have my producer sitting here next to me, and I'm going to have her set the clock for 1 minute. And then before the buzzer goes off, I need to answer my original question in under a minute, which is, how in the world is a medication made? Okay, here goes, people. Start the timer and go. 1, you have to discover a molecule. 2, figure out the best way to deliver it so that it doesn't get messed up. 3, a medication can come in a variety of forms. It can come in pills or capsules or infusions. 4, take into consideration safety and make sure it's not easy to abuse. I know that sounds funny. 5, keep in mind the best way to deliver a medicine for a specific need. Do I still have time? And last, the reason you can't make all medicine in gummy forms is that you want to make sure that people don't abuse it if it's too tasty. Okay, wait, so did I pass?
I think so. Yeah,
pass.
maybe
B
an
plus?
A minus.
Oh, A minus.
Yeah,
Wow.
being generous.
Nice.
Oh, great inflation going on there.
Much better than when I was in high school. I just want to say thank you guys so much again. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Nancy, for speaking with us today. It was a lot of fun, and I learned a lot. So just make sure to tune in next time for another episode of Things That Make You Go, Huh?
Things that make you go, huh?